about fashion, another reason to come to the site every day. That site should be dominating, and it isn't. Pardon me. To Condé's credit, though, having dinged them, they've done one of the most encouraging things lately I've seen with an ad campaign that they put together for Mercedes-Benz. They put together ads that ran across all their sites, including the recently shut down Domino. But when you hover over the ad unit, what comes down is a rich media dashboard that brings out Condé content. So this is about branding. This is about involving and engaging the readers with the content you've got, your strongest asset, honestly, and helping that rub off on the marketer right there, which is not so different from what we do in print and do very well in print. If we can find ways to do more of that online and in digital and in events, any other lines that we get involved in, I think that's a big plus. And this was actually not a big money campaign, and it wasn't obsessed with the kind of thing that we get obsessed with online. It wasn't about how many people signed up for a test drive. It was a branding awareness campaign, and I think by leveraging their content and getting it in there, they really gave us something to think about, and something that I hope more of you try. There are others who have been successful online. I think People, although it has a lot of strengths to play from in the first place, has done an excellent job of growing traffic and building up a property online. But they're doing something else that I think is important. They are adding stuff that's not necessarily in their print wheelhouse, because that's what their readers want. And I mean peoplepets.com. And you saw Martha the other day also got into pets. I sometimes joke that I think pets are the future of media, but I just mean it's the passion point. You find something like that, readers care about it, go for it. Dig into it. People also bought Celebrity Baby Blog. Who knew? I did not know this was going to be such a big deal. People was once about adult human celebrities. That is sort of, the definition is expanding, and they're getting traffic because of it. And again, I can't vouch for the bottom line. They'll have to tell us, but I think it's exciting. It reminds me of what one of Google's analytics gurus said when he came to the NPA's Magazine's 24/7 Summit in New York a couple weeks ago, maybe more. He said, you've got to look at where everybody is finding interest on your site. You should have your most emailed list. Every site should have your most read list so that people who show up casually can quickly find what's most important and what's resonating online. But as publishers, you've got to look at that too. You've got to say, oh, that's what people want. Give them more of that. It might not be in your typical wheelhouse, but if it's close, and if you can do it in a way that still represents your brand, I think that's something that you can't ignore. People know to expect different experiences from your brand in different media. I think that's totally legit. Everybody's caught up. Just follow your readers' interests. The Google guy, by the way, I should say, also pushed a lot of Google Analytics. Now, that's very self-interested, but not necessarily wrong. He wants you to know what your bounce rating is. How many people come to your website, look around, but don't click on a single thing and leave. There's a reason for that. How do you capture those people? How do you bring them in? Maybe some link drew them there. They thought they were going to find something interesting, and then they just tuned out. You can look at that traffic and try to figure out what's happening, and try to find ways to draw them in. As he said, advertisers and subscriptions are not going to save your business. Customers will. Rodale is another company that is doing very well. Not doing very well in print this year. I don't think that's fair to say. Nobody is. They've benefited in print, however, from the migration of the culture toward their core interests: organic, healthy living, these things. It's very good for their print magazines. Online, though, they've found ways to do something that newspapers are now kicking themselves for failing. They've got paid content. They've got the Biggest Loser Club, again, a little bit outside their wheelhouse, or at least the sort of brand image you might think of from Rodale. But they've got people paying $20 a month to come and interact with this over and over and over again. They're also on the men's health website, on the women's health website. They're selling workout videos. People are buying them to get the right techniques. It's worth exploring. I don't know how big the revenue stream gets, but I think if you learn anything from the recessions, it's hard to be dependent on ad revenue for almost the entire game. There are other perspectives on this. I talked to Jan Wenner around the time he was hiring his first chief digital officer. This is the end of 2008, so I guess he thought maybe he should look into the internet thing. But the problem that he's right to acknowledge is that the money you make off your visitors online is nothing like the money you make from your readers in print. I asked him whether there might be a way to try to narrow that gap. He said, that's not even what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build a site that's a companion for readers in print edition. And that's one strategy, but I honestly think Rolling Stone is in the same class as Vogue. It's a worldwide brand. You can do a lot. He said to me, there's a finite number of people who want to read about music. I think that's true. I just don't think Rolling Stone in print already has all those people. So, you know, things may change. He's had RollingStone.com licensed out to real networks for a few years, and I think at the end of next year, maybe that comes up. Once he's in control of selling his own ads on that site, maybe we'll see him take a different approach. By the way, while I'm on digital, I got to shamelessly plug the Ad Age Digital Conference. I do this because it's going to be good. April 7 and 8 in New York. I think if you book this week, there's still discounts. We've got great speakers from Time Inc. Digital, New York Times, moderated by Henry Blodgett of Silicon Alley Insider. But all that online stuff aside, you know, nobody in this room is going to forget about print. But it's important to keep saying, let's not forget about print. You know, this is where the brand grew. This is where the revenue still is. Magazines are not going away. Some magazines are. Some dollars are. But magazines are not going away. You know, there's a chance that the magazine business will split over time into a couple of really strong pockets. I look at high-end, high-polish, affluent targeted magazines, sort of the Arc Digest and on-up side of things. And on the other side, beautiful object art. You know, these things look great in your hand and on your coffee table and make you look smart and are almost decorative in themselves. That really plays to print's strength, the physical object. You like having it in your hand and around the house and keeping it even on your shelf. On the other hand, you've got Time Inc. selling millions of copies of All You for, I think it's $1.99 at Walmart alone. There's room for mass, cheap, you know, periodicals coming out every week telling people what they want to know about very basic elements of their life. I think the big question is what happens in the middle, where we've got a lot of information and content that, if it's not commoditized, it's certainly challenged by a lot of other sources trying to provide the same information. And not all of those sources have the same cost base that we do. You've got people doing for free what we're trying to do for money. And they don't care if they get paid, or they don't care if they get paid a little bit. That's very disruptive to what we're trying to do. So there's going to be a fight, I think, in terms of figuring out where your best strengths are, how much of your print edition is important, how much online goes. And you see magazines like US News trying to make these same calculations. They decided their strengths are in their rankings and their franchises. They're going to go monthly in print. Now, of course, that brings me to another element of the good news. That leaves the field for Time and Newsweek that much clearer. Those of us that get through this are going to be in much better position. I should also say launches are not going away, and Reader's Digest Association has given us great examples of that already this year, in 2009, which I would have pegged as the worst year possible to launch a magazine. They started off with an affinity club around the Reverend Rick Warren, who's got a huge following. This membership club, which costs a fee, comes with a quarterly Rick Warren magazine. Great, so they're going to do fine. You know, there's a built-in audience for that. The other thing they're doing is launching a shelter magazine. And I said, this has got to be the worst time to launch a shelter magazine. And they said, well, we're repurposing content from a shelter magazine in Australia, so it's really pretty cheap. The risk is that much lower. If you can find ways to take the risk down, whether it's bringing in a community of like Rick Warren's, or using content that already exists and already belongs to you, go for it. I mean, be creative. And by the way, Hearst is doing the same thing with the Food Network, which I hope works, and I think looks good, pretty good so far. And of course, as I alluded to, the recession survivors are going to be in great shape. You're going to be validated. Readers and advertisers stuck with you through this process. Your competitors dropped away. Your categories thinned. You're going to have, I bet, more ability to negotiate prices to your favor. You're going to have bragging rights. You're going to have a cleaner field. The newsstands, which have been chronically cluttered for years, and where sales have been coming down, are going to be more streamlined. And I'm not celebrating anybody going out of business or anybody losing their jobs. This is all an awful transition period. But the other side of it is going to be a strong period for magazines again. It's just going to be different. It's going to be structured differently, staffed differently. The revenue numbers, I think, are going to look different. Hopefully the cost numbers will come in line. So I look forward to seeing what happens. I'm going to be at Ad Age covering it. If you think I'm getting it wrong, please call me. I'll write down what you say. I'll probably print it. You'll help me look smarter. But for now, I think I'm going to leave it there. I think it's time to get into the real work. We've got some great panels coming up today. We've got great conversations coming. We've got Don Rossi from the MPA. So I look forward to the rest of the session. And for now, thanks very much for your attention. And I forgot to mention cocktails later, too.